When I walked away, I wish I had answers in that moment I knew I had a plan and this is what I was going to do after sport. But I think I sat in my car for a very long time and looked at my steering wheel and had to really find the ability to put the key in the ignition and drive away. Leaving sport and really having to dig in why I enjoyed my sport so long and going and saying, I'm not an athlete, but what made Rebekah Rebekah? And that was a process of figuring that out. It wasn't like I finished my race in 2018 and I knew exactly what I was going to do. I had to just start moving forward and really digging deep and going a couple layers deeper than the athlete that was inside.
Thank you for tuning in to the Mile 40 podcast. I am Bishoy Tadros, the author of Break Barriers and Audacious, both of which are sold on Amazon. And I invite you to join me as I engage with guests to discuss those bounce back moments that we encounter on our personal journey. Mile 40 is a forum to learn about how athletes, professionals, and leaders of all backgrounds stare down moments in life where the only option is to rise up. The Mile 40 podcast strives to remind listeners that the comeback is always greater than the setback. Welcome back to another episode of the Mile 40 podcast. Thank you all for continuing to tune in. I cannot thank you enough for your continued dedication, your support, and most importantly, your reviews. If you haven't already, please be sure to hit subscribe if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. Check out the show notes, pick up a copy of Break Barriers or Audacious. I will be sending that out myself, and I get excited every single time. Today's guest is Rebekah Bradford. She's a former Olympian, two-time U.S. long track speed skating champion, and natural connector who has built her career at the intersection of performance, resilience, and purpose. After years competing at the highest level, she transitioned into tech, bringing the same discipline and drive that fueled her athletic success into solving real-world problems. Today, as a product marketing manager, Rebekah partners with customers to understand their pain points and influence products that make meaningful impact. Her strengths lie in her efficiency, goal orientation, and ability to build authentic relationships that move people and ideas forward. She shared a fun fact that I can't help but make sure that I bring to the table right away. She met her husband when he won her at a celebrity date auction. Lucky for him, it was love at first sight. Rebekah, thank you for joining me today.
Yes, thank you for having me.
That's quite the icebreaker. So let's start there. When was that date auction?
Oh my goodness, that was you were the most sought out person after the Olympics for charities, for events, and all types of things. So I was asked to do this celebrity date auction after making the Olympics, and I actually had two other functions on that same day. So it was all online, and I put out a video similar to talking to you to proposition myself for a date for charity. And this follower on my fan page placed the winning bid. And that's literally how we met. So he had to drive from Minnesota to Utah to come meet me.
Wow.
And I thought, who does this? And I had another teammate who did the same thing. And the gentleman ended up not working out. So I was worried it was going to be a similar situation of that. So it was a chaperone event. This particular, my husband, he wanted to talk to me and all this sort of stuff leading up to the date. So I made a fake email address just to separate all that. And then when he came through the go-kart, is it go-kart? What is it? You're racing go-karts? That's what it was. It was an activity and dinner. He went through those doors and I'm like, this is the man I'm going to marry.
Wow.
Which is crazy. And then kind of like, how do I handle this date with this guy and not be like overzealous or anything like that? And I played the slow game. He was, after the date wrapped up and he went back up to Minnesota, he had a local competition. I tracked down the results and I messaged him and say, hey, great job on your comp, nice work. And we messaged each other like back and forth, and it got to the point where I had to be clear after like 2 months of that I wasn't looking for a guy friend. I was looking for a relationship, and I was focusing on my skating because I wanted to make another Olympic team.
Yeah.
And he waited 3 days to get back to me to start a relationship. So
Wow. So you thought you were playing the slow game.
yeah.
Funny, funny, funny. No, that's awesome. I mean, definitely incredibly unique, and it's just so heartwarming when it works out. Um, and it takes a leap. Like I've done date auctions before. I remember doing them after my first book was written, and you know, you really are really just doing it for the charity more so than anything else at the time. But were you in a place where you were actively looking for a relationship when you met your husband, or, what was dating life for you at that point in your life?
Yeah, that's a great question. I gave up dating. I realized that I needed to have the right person in order to continue competitively in my sport. And I kept getting into these cycles where it was taking me out of that focus. So I was like, well, the right um, person will come at the right timing. And that came, I think, when I was in a healthy spot where I wasn't like seeking that out or felt like I needed to be in a relationship.
Sure. And I think that's really, really important to kind of give that context and that background, because you had a lot going on in life, right? And we're gonna dig into that. So let's start off by, before you got to the peak of your career athletically, give us some background as to where life kicked off for you and how things started out, just to be kind of set the stage for what happened later on.
Sure. So I'm one of those that grew up skating. I'm from Minnesota, and I'm one of the last of the breed where we would wait for the lakes to freeze over and just go out and skate. And that means going out in the deep freeze and having fun. Like I enjoyed that. I've been part of my sport since Roseville, Minnesota. Woohoo. We got a outdoor 400-meter track. That was a big deal because there's only a handful of long track speed skating ovals in the US where we can actually train from. And so I was involved with one of the best development clubs in the country or in the world, in my opinion. And that got me to a junior World Cup level. And I made my first Olympic trials when I was 13. So I knew that I was on the right track of where I wanted to go. That's been my childhood dream to make the Olympics. And so when I graduated high school, I packed up everything and moved out here to Salt Lake City, where I still am currently living, to train with the national team. Um, and then so that was like from 2002 to, let's say, 2006, I would just kind of show up and do what the coach prescribed to do, thinking that it would just naturally get me to the next level. But it wasn't until that 2006 to 2010 block period where it really started to show up intentionally, looking at the program and seeing what did I need to do for that day in order to have success to get me closer to the goal that I wanted to do. And that brings us to my Olympic trial race for the in 2009 for the 2010 Olympics. Um, I had to win that race in order to qualify for the Olympics. And the way how that worked is that all my other teammates were able to pre-qualify at World Cups, and I missed the pre-qualification by, I think it was like 200ths in one of the distances. So I had to go back to the US championship in December and win the one last spot that was available to make the Olympic team. And I fell. I fell across the line, kicking and screaming, pounding my fist on the ice. Not only that, I split my skin suit, so I'm mooning everyone. Very vulnerable. It was so traumatic.
How old were you?
And I came in second.
Wow. Wow. How old were you at the time?
Oh gosh, I want to say 26.
Wow. Wow.
So yeah, that was at that moment. And the way how our selection process works is that you're able to do a reskate. And so from it was 30 minutes from when I fell, did an all out effort, and already talked to the referee, looked up to the stands, saw my 3-year-old nephew, and was like, I need to show him what it's like to stand up after falling. And it wasn't, I had no intention of making the Olympic team at that point. I just wanted to finish my career on my feet because I had all my support fans there, and I didn't want to finish my career falling and ripping my skin suit. So our skin suits, let's say if there's like 7+ materials in it, you got to stretch it out. I was on a brand new skin suit. My coach, did some technical things on my blades to make sure that my skates were still safe before I went onto the start line. And I was completely emotionally just, they're numb. And I had 2 coaches that went on the ice with me, and one just pat me on the back and said, "You got this." And I remember thinking, nothing. Like, I didn't like fight him. I didn't challenge that, but I also didn't go, yeah, I got this. I'm going to make the Olympic team. And normally then the head coach would come over and give me a huge game plan. This is what you're going to do, Bradford. You're going to attack the opener here. You're going to do this and that. And he just went on to be my cheerleader, which is what I needed. And the gun went off, and I like couldn't hear anyone until like I didn't realize I couldn't hear anyone when I crossed the line, because the whole oval like knew I was on a good time. And I crossed that line, and not only did I become the US sprint champion, I skated a personal best, but I made the Olympic team. And there's a photo I posted on my LinkedIn where I'm like covering my heart, and I'm looking at the stands, and everyone in the oval stopped what they were doing and was cheering me on for that race. And I had no clue. And it was just so beautiful. I think like the only thought that I had in that race was when I was coming around to the second to last turn, I remember hearing no, because there's a technical aspect in my race where when I get tired, I would pivot off, and you want to be able to lean into a turn and not like twist yourself when you're on a turn. It's like NASCAR. Like there's a certain way how you set up the turn. And I remember hearing like this no, and it wasn't like even my voice. And I held my position through, and that carried my speed through that last lap. And I'm so thankful for that. And doing that race and then doing that reskate in that way really set me up to know how to manage comeback and what to do in those moments when your emotions are just so high and so raw. And knowing that you can do the next thing, and you can do things when you don't know what the outcome's going to be. And so I'm so grateful for that moment, because I feel like it set me up for other challenges that I've had in my life since then.
How did can you? I mean, the thing about this is it's so unique and so special, and I don't know that I would do it justice. And I want you to kind of take us to the moment that race finished. And I'm sure there was a blackout period, but talk to us a little bit about some of the inner dialogue, once you realize what just happened.
I was so relieved. And um, you're right. There is a blackout period of that, but then there was extreme celebration with my family that was there. Um, they were just so happy to be able to like witness that. I know I had one brother that had to go back to he lives in the Middle East, but uh he had to leave before that race. So I know he was like super bummed about seeing that one. But that celebration with family after that was incredible. And then I love that my head coach, I love him so much. He's like, great job, Bradford. Okay, well, we're gonna literally, you have to go in the weight room and go lift some stuff. So it's like, okay,
Yeah,
job's done.
job's not
Let's
done.
focus on the Olympics. Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. Um, Talk to us a little bit about your life outside of skating at that younger age. Um, I only know one or two other people who are involved in the sport, and it's a very consuming sport in terms of time and in terms of the amount of dedication you need to give to it to do it at a high level. So, talk to me a little bit about what you were like, outside of the sport. What was your social life like at that point?
Yeah. So sport was a lifestyle and that point. And then let's say in the thick of it, we would have two workouts in a day. And then it's not just like an hour workout, it might be 2 to 3 hours, and you would have two of those. So you're working out around 6 hours, and then you're focusing on your recovery in between that. You're focusing on good hydration, good nutrition. Like there's certain ways how you feel your body at certain increments throughout the day, and then good sleep. So that's like the baseline. You want to focus on that baseline, and then you want to focus. I really focused on relationships that were authentic. And um, I'm an introvert at heart, so I had a handful of really great relationships that I could offload and really be who I was. And that really helped out. But I couldn't like go out and party, you know, I would have to choose. I'd have to choose those selective moments of when I would go out outside of my training program, especially that year of the Olympics. Like it was really focused on training and good recovery. Um,
Talk to us a little bit, and this is more for educational purposes, about what training was involved outside when you're not on the ice. So talk to us a little bit about, the kind of training you do in the weight room, and any other training that you need to incorporate as it pertains to the sport of skating.
yeah, so we would do weightlifting 2 times a week, and that'd be focusing on different various types of squatting and different types of deadlift. So really focusing on the leg strength and then all the auxiliary work that would complement those strong muscles, because you wanted to be you couldn't just be quad focused or hamstring focused. You wanted to have a great balance between that. And then because we were dominant, we would do some core exercises and back exercises that would really help out with those overuse injuries. And then we would do a lot of cycling work. So, that just depends on where we were in the cycle of the week. Sometimes we would do longer endurance, like those 4 hour rides, canyon rides, where you're really wanting to increase the number of capillaries and the way how your blood flow goes, and that helps out with your recovery. But then we would also do like those short intensive bike sprints. So it would just be kind of where we were in the training mode. Sometimes we would do running, but a lot of the skaters, we would have knee issues. So we would, if there was a running workout, for me, I had a lot of knee issues through my sport. I would be on the bike while my team was running. So I was still getting those high heart rates. And then sometimes we would throw in hockey skates and play a game um, of bandy, I think it was. We wouldn't slap sticks and pucks at each other, but the thinking was is that you're still pushing to the side, right? Um, and you're still getting that high intensity, and you're adding an element of fun, and you're enjoying your teammates. I think that you don't want to be so serious in your training program without having to be reminded about why you joined sport in the first place. Because if you don't enjoy it, then why are you doing it?
Hey, Mile 40 fam. I get asked a lot about my training programs and how I set myself up for success to cross finish lines all over the world. Well, I'm going to let you in on a secret. Recovery is half the battle. And in order to get that recovery, I rely on clean sources of protein. That's why my go-to protein shake is Owen. Only what you need. I have one after every single workout. 100% vegan and plant-based, Owen's plant-based shakes use a multi-source protein blend of pea, pumpkin seed, and flax seeds to include all essential amino acids to promote optimal daily health. Uncompromised taste. Owen brings together the essential elements of advanced nutrition, amazingly clean ingredients, functional superiority, and uncompromised taste. Now go ahead, go to www.liveowen.com. That's spelled LIVEOWYN.com. Use code MILE40 for 20% off your next purchase. Only what you need. How long is the traditional career? How long do people usually stick it out in this career, and when do people usually wind down?
I think it's getting longer. When I transitioned out, I was around 34, but now there's some women there that still involved in sport and they're reaching their 40s. And I think that the science has gotten better, um, and there's more tools and resources available to help out with that longevity of sport.
You mentioned you were 34 when you transitioned out, and I just can't help think, just given the uniqueness of the sport, and it's an individual sport. This isn't like you played soccer or played like a team sport. So much of the emotional and mental resilience that you've built throughout your lifetime was tied to your own individual performance. And, you know, I'm not in a place to say it's harder to transition out of an individual sport versus, transitioning out of a team sport. But from a distance, 34 years of being devoted to a sport, I can't imagine what that transition must have been like. So talk to me a little bit about when you realized it was going to be time to transition away from the sport, and some of the emotions and the decision making that you had to make there.
Yeah, when I officially hung up my skates, I mean, when I say 34, that means that was 8 years of trying to make another Olympic team. So there was a lot of emotional um, investment in there. And then during that block, I had 5 knee surgeries and then a bilateral pulmonary embolism, which was blood clots in my lungs. And then I left having to have back surgery that I delayed to complete my last Olympic trial. So I've done 6 Olympic trials in my career. Um, and that was, I just wanted to finish my sport with a complete season. So it was very important to me. When I walked away, I wish I had answers in that moment I knew I had a plan and this is what I was going to do after sport. But I think I sat in my car for a very long time and looked at my steering wheel and had to really find the ability to put the key in the ignition and drive away. Um, and then there's just a moment where my husband he really encouraged me. He's like, you just need to find a job and just get out there and start working. I don't care what it is, just start doing something. And I think that was very wise of him to tell me. And that was, um, I think that's good advice when you're in those moments to just start moving forward with something and thinking about what the next right thing is. Yeah, and that eventually, through leaving sport and really having to dig in why I enjoyed my sport so long, and going and saying, I'm not an athlete, but what made Rebekah Rebekah? And it was, I love programs. I love building programs. I love seeing how to improve and make them better and seeing the impact on that. And that's been the common thread throughout all the various jobs that I've had, which has landed me into product marketing, which is wonderful because it's an iterative space and you're constantly building blocks on that. And that was a process of figuring that out. It wasn't like I finished my race in 2018 and I knew exactly what I was going to do. I had to just start moving forward and really digging deep and going a couple layers deeper than the athlete that was inside.
Did you find, or have you now found, the the synergies between, your life as an athlete and now your life in the corporate world? Because I think that one thing that's very evident, not just with yourself but with other guests that we've had on the show with prominent athletic backgrounds, is the skill set that you just have built up over the decades of training, and how they correlate to the corporate world. By far play such a big role in not only how you think, but in how you take action and how you influence other people. Was that something that you were conscious of early on as you made this transition of, knowing that you have a little bit of an edge and you were trying to figure out the best way to use it? Or did it come about later, about where you then found the role that worked for you and then you started to channel the athlete that was there, and bring that person to life in your role?
Yeah, I think it came later and it's like continuing now. And I think a lot of it is when I've been in conversations and working through conflict and figuring out challenges, and maybe this product launch didn't go the way how it intended. It's going back to keeping the main thing. And uh, like I have the ability to do that. And it gives me a place of calm going, okay, well, that happened over here. Same thing as an athlete, like when I was going through the pairings and you have someone before you that knocked a race out of the moon, which is incredible, you have to like block that out and go, my main thing is to know what I need to do when I go to the start line. I'm receiving in data. Let's go do the race, finish it, and then reassess what needs to be adjusted in the next step. And I feel like I have the ability to do that in a professional setting to go, okay, I'm collecting data. Let's, let's perform with what we got and then see how we can take that data and improve the next time we do this.
You brought up the blood clot earlier, and I'm believe me, I'm not going to overlook that. I know that's an important part of the story here. So why don't you take us back there with regards to what went down and how that came about?
Yeah. So after the 2010 Olympics, I met the love of my life and I went back to, I was like, okay, I focused so much on skating. I want to work a little bit on balance work before refocusing on 2014, which was Sochi. So I went back and finished my bachelor's at the University of Utah. So go Utes. And then I was also planning a wedding. And then 3 months before the wedding, I chose to take hormonal birth control. And at that time, I didn't know I had something called factor V Leiden, which is a blood clotting disorder. And the moment I started taking, the birth control in a regular dosage, I had immediate signs and symptoms of blood clots. And I called my OB at the time, and the advice was I was just getting used to that dosage, so don't worry about it. I was also surrounded by healthcare professionals, right? We saw doctors, and I'm not blaming anyone in the professional setting, but when you have someone that looks healthy and they're training, they're going for Olympic teams, and um, they're in love, they're getting married, uh, there were some things that were overlooked. So I was misdiagnosed for 6 months. On my misdiagnosis, I was 3 months into my marriage and I almost widowed my husband. So I remember when he came home from work, he asked me if I wanted him to come home early from work. I was like, oh no, no, finish it. And he saw me curled up on the floor with a wedding photo because I was in so much pain. I couldn't breathe. I had pain in my rib cage because the month before, one of the pieces of advice was I was out of shape. So to add in more cardio. So I was playing ultimate frisbee with some friends and I collided with one. And what happened was I had blood clots that burst and bled around my rib cage. And it was so painful. And then I was starting to get like cortisone shots in my back, and that was just not resolving it. But so my husband saw me lying on the floor and he just picked me up and took me to the ER. And the ER doctor said if he didn't take me in that night, I was close to having a stroke or a heart attack because lying down on the table, my resting heart rate was around 135. And then I was trying to train on top of that. And so that was in 2012. So I have been very blessed. I've had a wonderful thrombosis doctor who I consider a friend. He was very liberal with my healing process and what we did. He was very aggressive with my blood thinners. I still wanted to go back and still try to skate. Um, I somehow managed from that happened in September 2012. I somehow still skated the US championships in December of 2012, um, wearing a helmet. I was on the ice, right? Because when you're on blood thinners, you have to like protect your head. There's really not much you can do if you take an impact with your organs. But honestly, like I trusted my teammates on the ice. I trusted my ability on the ice to not take a fall. I was more concerned about driving a car with that amount of blood thinners I had. Um, So the recovery process for me, it took several years in order to take a full breath without pain. And in 2014, I was still recovering, and I missed the Olympic team by a tenth. So, and then I'm competing against girls who were world record holders at the time. So it was a very it was a very high level playing field in order to make that team. So that was looking back at it now, I'm very proud of that. But in that moment, I felt like such a failure. I felt like I let down the blood clotting community. I felt like I left down my skating community, but really, I didn't. I showed what you can do, that you can still live a life after blood clots and still enjoy those things that you want to do and make that comeback.
What did that experience teach you about your own mortality?
Yeah, we got to enjoy what we have and be grateful for all of it. And that means being grateful for the good things and the bad things. Like you just got to and fully embrace it, and appreciate that support group that we have. Like there's always one person at least that you can reach out to and, um, get that love and tenderness that you need. But I feel like God wasn't done with me. And so I'm here for that reason.
Were you open about your journey at the time?
What do you,
Were you publicly open with your journey at that time?
yes. Yep. So I was very discouraged with, like those Facebook communities, like I'm sure you've seen them where it's like a survivor group
Sure.
and you get in there and it's like Reddit. So
Yeah.
it's like you don't, I was like, they, there's a lot of being trapped in that diagnosis, and there is some goodness in there, but I knew that that wasn't the community for me. I also knew that my thrombosis doctor, one of the best pieces of advice he told me was to live life as normally as possible. And so that really got me through those tender days leading through it. And I was very open in sharing that journey through that. And it's allowed me to do some advocacy work through the National Blood Clot Alliance. I still openly talk about and share the awareness of what the signs and symptoms of blood clots are. And then since then, I've been able to help my mom who's had blood clots. My dad has had blood clots, like for different various reasons. And so to be able to to catch it in my loved ones, because I know now exactly what to look for, I'll say, go to the doctor and get that checked out. And I think that's only because I've been open throughout that whole process.
Well, I do think, for the purposes of this conversation, let's educate the audience. What are some of the signs and symptoms that people should be looking out for?
Yeah, so if you have a DVT, which is deep vein thrombosis, it generally starts in a calf, and it could be one or both calves that are swollen, tender to touch, and as they go through into your lungs, when they go through your lungs, they pass through your heart. That's when you have the shortness of breath. You're having a hard time calming yourself down. You might have thoughts of mortality. I did that too. Like the last week before I went to the ER, I was thinking about, death a lot and didn't know why. And it was because I was in those final moments before I got the care. And then a great resource is just to visit the National Blood Clot Alliance. They're always posting great educational stuff. I know that there's other risk factors involved that occur with blood clots, and mine was specific to factor 5 with the hormonal birth control. And I don't I never have asked or told women not to do that. I just have asked them to be aware that that could happen and know what to look out for.
Yeah. I can't help but, as this conversation continues, you've had experiences, a combination of experiences that very few people can relate to. They're incredibly unique, incredibly powerful, and incredibly life changing in different ways. The thrill of making it to the Olympics, and align that with the level of emotional impact of uncovering a diagnosis like this. And as someone who works in the corporate world myself, I know that my unique experiences in my lifetime definitely impact how I show up to work, because I've seen a level of success in the area of sport, and I've seen a level of almost meeting death when it comes to my medical background as well. And that impacts how I show up daily. That impacts how I interact with people. That impacts how I prioritize things in my life. Talk to me a little bit about, how your experiences have shaped you now in your daily life, now that, a lot of these things are behind you. Are these things that really, shape who you are as a wife, as a mother, and as an employee?
Yeah, I think as a wife and mother, it's well, and an employee too, it's that connection, right? I think we've had even just massive explosion with AI. And I think there's an element of remembering that there's another human being that we're talking to and engaging with. And that's being present and being mindful of that. Am I on my phone scrolling through Instagram when I'm hanging out with my child? I'm not perfect at it, but I am practicing that to put that away, because what I learned as an athlete is that I had to be fully invested in the moment in order to have the best performance possible. And so if I'm talking to you, or if I'm talking to, let's say, my boss, I'm going to put away all distractions and have that conversation. I think that that's been like a thread from being an athlete to having that all encompass in my relationships, to actively listen and not try to think about how I'm going to answer before, you know, the other person I'm talking to has finished their sentence.
Yeah. Yeah. And I did mention that you're a mother, but I kind of just jumped into that. And you're a girl mom, and I have two girls, so we got that going for us. How old is your daughter?
She's 2 and she's adopted. Um, and I just love her to pieces. Before her, we actually had I don't we had a failed adoption. We had the the baby showers all set up and the nursery was all set up, and that birth mother made the best decision and chose to keep the baby, and we celebrate that and recognize that. But we were also celebrating that my husband and I were going to be a mom and dad. And so there was a moment of grief. And I feel like this was another God moment because there was a moment when I cleaned out the nursery 2 months after that. And it was like the moment I finished cleaning out that nursery, we got a call about this mom that was delivering and would we be interested in this child? And I don't know if you're familiar with adoption or if some of your listeners maybe they're a little new to it, but there has to be a mutual alignment on that. Like we can say that we're interested in this child, but then the birth mother has to select us. So it needs to be a match. And we said, sure, we're interested. We've been in this situation before. We haven't been picked. We're not like no pressure. This was on a Friday, Saturday. This was on a Saturday. Yes, because it was the weekend and we were picked, and I had to go down to Vegas to go like meet our daughter. And then what do I do? Hey, my company, I have to go on maternity leave. I'm picking up this child. Like it was just it all worked out. It was great. But yeah, I think it was the best way to do it to like not have that anticipation and build up leading up to when we got Gabriella. That it was just kind of like happened on a Saturday after cleaning the house.
Do you want to tell us a little bit, and this is totally, balls in your court, about what led to the path to adoption?
We've we tried many years to adopt, and I would be very high risk for pregnancy due to the factor five and then all those hormones that would come through. And not that we wouldn't embrace that if that were to happen, but it would be extremely high risk to go through that. And so this was after many years of trying for that family. Um, and then we were able to have that family through adoption.
That's awesome. It's awesome. I think I just want to tell you how grateful I am for you, for you, for your husband, and for uh, the impact that you're surely going to have on your daughter's life. I think that adoption is such a beautiful thing. I think it's such a beautiful thing, and it's a topic that I wish I could talk about more through this platform, because I think what you're doing is it's a hard decision for a lot of people, but the impact that you're having, there's no limit to it, and it takes an extraordinary amount of love, that I feel like it takes someone special, and I'm very grateful for you for sharing that with us today, and for letting us in, on your life there. But also, one thing that I can't help but think about is you have a daughter, you're a mom, you've experienced so much in your lifetime, and you're a continuous learner. One thing that I know about people who are born and bred as athletes and who've lived athletic careers, and who have even transitioned out of sport, is the fact that they're eager to learn and they continue to show up daily. And there's a level of humility that has to come with having that athletic mindset. It's goes back to what you said about, you know, you don't want to end you don't want to end your career on the ground, right? You want to make sure that you get up from that. And now, as a father myself, that's the type of thing that you want to be able to pass on to your children, and that's the type of energy that you want to share with your children. But one thing that I've learned is it's a lot harder to teach it as opposed to experiencing it. So, talk to me a little about how you plan to employ uh, yourself as a parent to set your child up for success to kind of, build their resilience.
Yeah. Um, Currently, it's bringing her along with me to everything. I work remotely, so she sees me work, and she knows that she's a working girl too. So
Mm,
she's learning
I love
right
that.
along with me. When I go to the gym, she comes with me to the gym with errands. She's right alongside. I think that there's a lot of learning through just watching your parents go through it. Um, and then she's 2, so now we're starting to have conversations about adoption because she knows she started to have noticed the different skin color that we have because it's a transracial adoption, and so she's starting to notice that, and we're picking up certain books that at bedtime I'm reading that to her because she's going to have a different type of life than as as you are with your children. I want to prepare her and to protect her, and there's a lot of like education that I need to do as an adoptive mom, and an adoptive mom of a transracial adoption, and knowing that she's going to be out in the world and have comments that she's going to have to know how to navigate herself, because I'm not going to be able to protect her, and that's where I want to be able to prepare her. And I think that is having those conversations now at bedtime story, and then trying to expand out our community so that way she can feel embraced and feel belonged. Like one of the things right now, I'm looking for a hair braider because she has this tight, beautiful, curly hair, and I want her to have that experience. So it's being mindful of the things that she needs to do instead of, well, this is how I want to live my life.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean that level of awareness, and it's not just, it's awareness at an emotional level, and at a level that, it's incredibly maternal, and just so powerful, and it speaks volumes to you. And I cannot, I can't say enough good things. Like in my head, I'm like Rebekah is amazing because uh, um it takes a lot to do. It's a lot of learning too, like for yourself, let alone your daughter. And you said it yourself, like, you have to learn. And something tells me that, this is a continuous process of learning, because no one is equipped first of all, no one's equipped with the skills to be a parent, let alone, be an adoptive parent. There's no manual for parenting to begin with. And so, to kind of take it to that next level speaks volumes of you, and to face it head on too. Again, just incredibly proud to have you on for many reasons, but that being one of them. Um, one of the things that you did a couple days ago was you shared that you were going to be on a podcast with your LinkedIn audience, and I saw that you threw that post out there. So I was kind of looking at that post to see if anyone had anything good to say. There was one question that stood out to me, and one of the questions that people asked was, "What do you wish people believed and acted on in business that you have at the highest level of sport in order to see any meaningful success?"
I really think it just boils down to bringing it back to the basics. I think that if sometimes I've seen professionals get stuck in the weeds and overthinking processes too much, and a lot of it is going back to what are the company goals, and what can I do to help deliver towards those goals, and what are those foundational steps to get there. And I think that if we're able to step back and see what that bread and butter is, then there's a lot more success that can stem from that. Because, for example, in skating, I spent 30 years sitting low and pushing to the side. But sitting low and pushing to the side when I was 5 years old looks different than when I was an Olympian and on the World Cup level. But I was still sitting low and pushing to the side. And so it's just going back to those basics. And there are so many things that you can do scaling wise with that. And I think that that's so important to like to bring it back and refocus on those goals.
Yeah. No, I think that that is spot on, and just so important, and it just goes back to just keep it, keep it simple, stupid. I have a sign up there, just to constantly
Yeah.
remind myself too, that a lot of times we overcomplicate things that don't need to be so complicated. Um, Rebecca, as we round things out here, the thing about you is that you have had so many different experiences in different arenas. And if I had to think, or if you had to come up with a theme or a tagline, or even a potential title for a book that you would write about yourself, what would it be? How do you want to be defined at this point? And I don't mean that in a pretentious kind of way. I don't not how do you want people to think of you, but how do you want your story to be reflected, and what values do you want people to walk away with after they hear about how you've navigated the different experiences of your life, from training to the highest level of sport to transitioning out of sport into the world of tech, and then becoming an adoptive parent and navigating the adverse circumstances of a blood clot, and kind of knocking down the door of something pretty tragic. Talk to me about what values you want people to leave behind after speaking to you, and hearing about your journey.
Yeah. That's a great question. I would say you just have to keep showing up, right? Each day is a new day. It's a fresh day. Today is the day that the Lord has made. I'll rejoice and be grateful in it. And what does that look like today? And being intentional towards the goal that you want to go to. And if that goal is a moving target, at least try to progress forward with what you have in the day. And a lot of times those doors will open as you are walking through them. Um, I think it's a lot of believing in yourself and your abilities and knowing what you can do. You have to filter out the noise of some of those louder voices and be confident knowing that you're able to move forward and you're able to do those things too.
Rebecca, that's perfectly said. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I cannot thank you enough, really, because you've given us so much to reflect on, so much to think about. What's crazy about your story to me is that it's easy to think that with everything that you've been through, it would be hard to relate to you, but you're just so human with regards to how you navigated all the different eras of your life. And that's what makes you incredibly special in my eyes, is that despite the fact that I have not experienced a lot of things that you've experienced, I see the humanity in you, and that humanity shines bright. And I believe that is what the Mile 40 audience is going to be able to take away from today's episode. And I just want to say thank you for coming on.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure. I've enjoyed this conversation with you. I enjoy following your content, and I'm excited to be part of your community.
You got it.